please stand. Good morning. What is your full name?
Clarence M. Nathan.
Okay, that's not on your bio. Thank you. We have Pastor Clarence M. Nathan here. He's the pastor of New Victory Baptist Church here in the city of Tampa, and he's the senior pastor there for 15 years, a graduate of Shaw University, HBCU, you go, and University and Divinity School, where he completed his undergrad studies and Master's of Ministry that he's currently working on at Faith Theological Seminary and Christian College. He is a proud member of the Fearless Four, a group that changed the structure of the city of Tampa government. He's married to Carver City homegirl Deidre Cambridge. Nathan, his wife of 20 years. He has 6 children, and 5 are professionals, with 1 son who is currently serving as a police officer for our great city of Tampa. Welcome for the invocation.
Thank you.
Please stand.
Most gracious, everlasting Father God, we do come now this morning to give honor and praise with thanksgiving to your glorious and mighty name. We thank you for this day that you've made a day we choose to rejoice and be glad in. We ask it as we invite and invoke your presence and your power into this council chamber this morning. Move among these honorable servants, Lord God, as they go forth to carry out the business of this city. Lead them and guide them and direct them, we pray in the glorious and mighty name of Jesus. We pray, Father God, for our mayor. We pray for our city council. We pray for the members of our police department, Father God, that stand on the precipice between good and evil. Bless us and care for us as we go forth as a city. Father, we remember those whose lives were taken in 23 years ago on 9/11. We ask that you will bless and care for the survivors, and we ask that you continue to help us to look to you for our help and our strength. These and all blessings we ask in the glorious and mighty name of Christ, our Savior and our Lord. Amen.
Pledge
Pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Nathan, thank you so much,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
thank you for your
just-
service as
Just
a
one correction on there. My master's degree was on there, but I'm a candidate for the doctoral program. That's what.
Yes, I said you're seeking it.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
And thank you for your service to the city of Tampa.
Thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion to adopt the, can I have a roll call first?
Carlson? Here. Hurtak?
Here, virtually.
Clendenin?
Here.
Maniscalco?
Here.
Vieira? Miranda?
Here.
Henderson?
Present.
We have physical quorum.
Okay, and can I have a motion, Mr. Massey? What do we need to do about our absent members?
We have memos from both Board Member Hurtak, who is attending virtually, and I believe also from Board Member Vieira, who plans to attend virtually. And so could I get a board motion permitting those virtual attendance by those board members?
Okay, we have a motion by Maniscalco, second by Clendenin. All those in favor? Okay.
And we are required to have a physical quorum here at all times.
And we do.
So, just-
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes from the last meeting? Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. And now, please go over the rules for, no, let's come up and adopt let's set the agenda for today. Can I have the director come forward and we set the agenda and to adopt today's agenda for our meeting? We have a few things to take care of here. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the CRA board. Cedric McCray, interim CRA director. Pleasure to see you this morning. We have a few continuances that I would like to highlight. Items number 8, 10, 11, and 12. Would request that those items are continued. You should have received a memo in your board packet.
And what about 7?
And 7. Yes.
So that's 7, 8, 10, 11, and 12. All those in favor?
And then the next request is that we move item 4 up after the East Tampa CAC report. We were informed this morning that one of the individuals with HR will have to leave for another appointment. So we wanted to make sure they were here.
Maniscalco and Dennis. All those in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for public comment. Attorney Massey, can you go over the rules, please?
Yes,
Members of the public are allowed a reasonable opportunity at the beginning of the CRA meeting to address any item on the agenda before the CRA takes official action on that item. However, a 3-minute time limit applies to all speakers providing public comment unless that time frame is modified by a vote of the majority of the CRA board. Speakers and members of the public are also reminded that they are to refrain from disruptive behavior, including making vulgar or threatening remarks, or making or causing disruptive noises or sounds, or displaying signs or graphics. Speakers are also reminded to refrain from launching personal attacks. The chair will rule out of order any person who speaks without being recognized or attempts to address the CRA board from outside the speaker area or at the podium. Persons failing to comply with the CRA rules may also be ruled out of order, and at the discretion of the chair may be moved to the chambers for the remainder of that day's meeting. Finally, CRA board members are reminded that they should refrain from engaging a speaker under public comment. The City Council rules, as revised on June 6th of this year, are now in effect for the CRA board unless otherwise exempted or overridden by the CRA bylaws.
Thank you so much. Okay. Any public comments today? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, City of Tampa, CRA Board. My name is Sandy De Diego Sanchez. I'm a volunteer on the West Tampa Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm here as a private citizen that cares about all of West Tampa and the future of the community within the CRA. I'm here to ask your help to help the West Tampa CRA and all CRAs accomplish their goals. In the last 2 months, July and August, items have miraculously appeared on our updated project list. When asked about the projects, we were told there would be city folks that would explain these projects. I have questions. I even emailed the manager of our board and you, the CRA board, to have some questions answered. I also asked that my question be shared with other board members. To date, that has not happened. Hopefully, the questions will be answered at the next CAC meeting. I'm not sure if the CRA board made those suggestions or the administration. The projects have little to do with the goals of the CRA, which are affordable housing, controlling slum and blight, and economic development within the CRA communities. We have projects that have dragged on for years because of the CRA workflow. There's no sense of urgency to help us fulfill these goals. We seem to forget that we have time limits. They're standing over our heads, and the time is getting shorter and shorter. Lately, you have asked the managers to present a list of projects for each CRA. May I suggest that this list include the date of the project's inception, not just the date it went on the list. You will see some of them are 2 or 3 years old. This will give you a much better idea why the projects either are on or not moving forward. I'm here to ask you to help us stay on track by rejecting projects that do not directly work towards accomplishing our goals: affordable housing, controlling slum and blight, and economic development. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Connie Burton. I want to just start off by saying blight culture is so important to the whole world. And this week we have suffered a tremendous loss inside of our communities nationwide. I really want to come and talk about item number 12, but you have taken it off, and I hope it stay off for the simple reason that this organization has should be responsible for providing guidance in homeownership. And for the last 2 years, they have tried to get their building remodeled on Hillsborough Avenue, but without the resources, they can't go forward unless the CRA from East Tampa contribute to that. And the last time the ask was for over $500,000. I hope that is always rejected. Secondly, the issue of slum, blight, and poverty. That is what your mission should be. That is the mission of the CRA goals. And so why are we in a constant cry for targeted investment inside of East Tampa? We have the resources. We have come up with good ideas in terms of how resources can be used to generate ongoing income, how that can serve the requests made by the community can serve as an incentive for young people in our community. Right now, just based on the last voting statistics, our communities are gutted. We do not have the affordability of people to maintain in East Tampa, and all of you are aware of it. In the land acquisition, we should be able to partner with vocational tech schools, USL, to build houses or to see if we can develop partnerships, because we know the developers won't do it. And so our community, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the report is this morning, because I hear a lot of planning, a lot of dreaming, but it always jumps above what the people have requested. We have requested real economic development in the community, that the population that is presently in East Tampa will be able to benefit, as opposed to newcomers coming in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mentesnot, Tampa, Florida. Want to say Uhuru. Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. And we as African people should always be thinking about our freedom. We should never, not one day in our lives, not be thinking about our freedom, irrespective of what else we see going on in society. Just like Palestinian people should never, not one day in their lives, stop thinking about their freedom and independence. And I use the Palestinian people right now because that's what's popular in the world, right this second. But the fact of the matter is, for the last 824 years, African people have been just in a worst case scenario under European white Western civilization and North American dominance. We've been in the worst case scenario. But one thing people always have to understand in life, the ruling class don't allow any of the institutions of coercion to worry about the people, the masses of the people. Society is on automatic, irrespective of what it is. If it's the disparaging housing conditions in East Tampa, if it's the flooding in South Tampa, if it's the flooding in Bayshore Boulevard, if it's the flooding in Henderson and Del Mabry, if it's the flooding in Euclid Avenue, no matter what it is, society is on automatic. And the masses of people have to look out for ourselves. We have to organize and look out for ourselves. But that being said, the African people, we have it the worst. For the last 824 years, we have experienced slavery, occupation, lynching, dispossession. Just think of it. Just think of something negative. Just think of something hateful. And we've been experiencing it. Well, why so? Because the ruling class allows it to happen. That's how they control society, and that's how they extract all the economics, all the politics, all the social structures. They extract it for themselves and their families only. And billions of people are left with nothing. And African people have no representative. We've had no representative in 824 years. We've always been placed in a position where we're scared to even speak out. We're scared to speak out of when we hear disparaging things, when we see lynchings, when we see, if wasn't because of a few brave African women, they were lynching Africans day and night. Nothing, can't do nothing about it. You see police violence, African people can't do nothing about it. That information is coming from the top down. And we hear Mr. Donald Trump talking about African people not eating dogs and cats. Normally it's a Chinese joke and Chinese food, but now they put it to African people eating dogs and cats. Well, you know, and nobody to respond. But I'm going to respond to that because you can't offend our people. The dogs and cats that Donald Trump is talking about are the dogs and cats and that smell, that offensive smell that's coming out of the vagina of Melania Trump and Ivana Trump.
You are out of order, sir.
Of course I am. Donald Trump was out of order. I ain't seen you screaming nothing about that.
Next speaker, please. I just want to identify for the record that that was disrespectful to everyone in the chamber. And as the chair, I do not condone that behavior. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Amy Patterson, and I live at the Towers of Channelside. My purpose today is to make the council aware of the extreme difficulty we're having getting the noise ordinance enforced at 602 Channelside, the rooftop parties. As many of you know, in 2022, City Council changed the Channel District from an entertainment district to a residential district. As outlined in Article 3, Section 14-154, the definition of loud and raucous noise exists thanks to you all and the approval of the noise ordinance in 22 that was so very important to us that live in Channelside District, that helped deal with Park and Rec. That was profusely appreciated, and we can't thank you enough for that. Thousands of people now live in the Channelside District. On October of 23, 602 Channelside was purchased by 602 RE Holdings. Prior to the sale, this was an attorney's office. The problem is the ordinances that you created and approved are being completely ignored by RE Holdings in the 5 rooftop parties to date. The problem is the ordinance is being completely ignored despite hundreds of calls to Tampa Police Department on party nights and even the petition by our residents. 602 Channelside has yet to get one single citation. I'm making you aware of the non-enforcement of Article 3, Section 14-159 enforcement, and asking your support to correct the situation. We look forward to meeting with Councilwoman Henderson, who has graciously agreed to meet with us on September 24th to resolve the enforcement issue. I would also like to thank Ms. Darlene Johnson, who's been working with myself and other residents. She's been very gracious and very helpful. Please know that I have given a copy of the next party to I believe you're an attorney, for your review. And you can see by the verbiage on that document in that flyer that it's a direct threat to the ordinance of the city of Tampa and the Channelside ordinance, and it's actually very vulgar. So we'd appreciate your concern, and we look forward to meeting with you. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we have the same documents that were given. I'm sure I haven't seen it.
There was only one set of documents provided. The clerk has it. I gave it to her to make it part of the record. If you all want to review it, she
Yeah,
can
we're going to have to. in
I
order for us
have
to-
more copies if that would be helpful.
You brought copies for us?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll take them.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next speaker. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, council members. Thank you for having me. My name is Steve Hernandez. I am also a resident of the Towers of Channelside, and I'm here to amplify what my colleague Amy had and my neighbor said about the goings-on at 602 Channelside. To my knowledge, to date, there has been no enforcement of the city ordinance regarding the noise violations that are occurring at that location. And I'm at a loss as to the reason why. There are hundreds of residents who are affected and impacted between our building and the Heron directly across the street. The noise emanating on the nights of these events is offensive. It's becoming a public nuisance, and we need your help to put an end to this. Let's all be good neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you get it? Charlie.
Good morning, my name is Pastor Frank Williams,
Good morning.
located at 1112 East Scott Street. And we've been coming down here year after year after year looking for some help. But nobody seemed to want to help us. And Tony Daniel, he come in here, he's speaking the truth, but nobody give a damn whether it's the truth or not. But you got to understand, we are still human beings, created by the power of Almighty God. And we are the same people. And we're going to keep coming down here until God calls us home. But you know what? I was reading the other day, what was that guy that the police killed? Floyd Joy or whatever. You know who killed that poor man? And the black people are standing up right there. And the white folk. And they killed, there was a Puerto Rican guy that killed that guy. Ain't that something? And nobody do nothing about it. Put the man in a private place, and he being fed every day and being taken care of. And he getting a check right on. But you know what? We got to understand. We don't come down here to be healthy. Y'all know God. You think y'all, but you know God. You know about but people just like me and everybody else. Do the right thing for us. Do what is supposed to be done. My water been shut off now for 5 months. You think y'all did something about it? Y'all don't do a damn thing about it. Y'all
Pastor
kill
Williams, I want you to refrain from using the words,
Well, I
the
got to
profanity.
use- I got
I want you to
use it. Maybe
refrain from using those
Maybe I can
words,
get your
sir.
attention. I don't care how much you bam on that thing. But that's the only way I can get your attention, by saying what I'm saying. But y'all don't seem to understand. Just like I say, we are citizens of the United States of America, but we are treated like dogs. And just like Tony Daniels say, they feeding dogs and cats in Africa. I'm not in Africa. I'm here in Tampa, Florida. Y'all feeding them dogs still? Cats and all that stuff? No, it don't make no difference what Trump say. It makes a difference what God Almighty say and what he gonna do. And y'all not gonna hinder me from doing what's right. I got to do what's right because I love God. And I love God very, very much. May we all give God the glory, whether you want to or not. I'm going to always, this one nigga, will always give God the glory. Thank you. And I ain't go down on as much as you want.
Next speaker, please. If there are any remaining speakers, please stand.
Good morning, council. I want to talk about this project right here that says the word new next to it. It's in that CIP paperwork that I kind of have an issue with because it says CIP and we have a different thing on the city's website that says CIP that is not this list. And so I got real confused. And if I got confused, I'm sure there was other people who are confused. But it says that this project is new. But I just gave you a timeline for this project. And here's what I want to talk about this morning. Why would city staff bring a want in front of this council before they brought their needs before this council? In January of 2022, the city of Tampa purchased 5005 North Howard and 5112 North Albany, which I was confused is actually 2 lots. It's over 8 acres, which is what we need for the fire maintenance yard. I'm just saying. And then October 2022, they passed a thing for the impound yard, not more than 2.8 million. Where are the plans? It's been 2 years. Somebody already gave them 2.8 million. I'm sorry, I'm confused, but they came back a couple weeks ago and asked for more. After that, it's crickets. We got a new council. Not everybody who's up there now was here then. In June, Brad Baird submitted a documentation that gave a $150,000 stipend to the shortlisted developers for the Riverwalk project. We're paying for bids now? Are you freaking kidding me? That document is on base. Then we start looking at the COT asking the citizens of Tampa to contribute $26 million to the Riverwalk project. Now, I'm not necessarily against it, but it seems like a want. We want to have a Riverwalk. We want to have a pretty place to go. Well, I personally don't care about it because I'm not going walking around on the cement anything in the middle in Tampa. Like Charlie says, there's 2 seasons, summer and Christmas. And Christmas isn't that long. Okay, so on July the 18th, the Riverwalk comes back for second reading. Now, they wait a month and then come to you and say, we need $40 million for this forensic building. Wait a minute. You put the want before the need? Would you as council or this CRA have made the same decision had you known that this $40 million need was coming up? I would argue maybe not. But they were hoping like hell that you had forgotten that in January of 2022, they bought this land and that they did this. But here's what gets me the most. This is what really rides my crawl. And I'm sorry if you can't see this. This is 4608 North Lois Avenue. It belongs to Crockett Towing Company. We are currently paying them $10,000 a month to rent this 1 acre building. Now, mind you, here it is again, but we own 8 acres out there. Please, council, ask for a tour of that property. Is it uninhabitable? Why are we spending $10,000 a month when we spent $3-4 million to buy 8 acres of property and it's already fenced in? You see this? This is me. I drove out to the property. I looked around. It's 6-foot privacy fence with barbed wire. Why in the hell are we spending $10,000 a month to rent someplace when we already own this? It makes no sense. $40 million we want to spend on this. Thank you.
Ms. Pointer, your time is up.
That's fine.
Thank you.
I didn't get dinged.
I didn't see the red light come on. Okay,
Sorry about that.
we're starting off with a bang this morning. Let's go on to, first item on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You did stand up, please.
Public comment?
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm here to ask for your help.
State your
You
name
should
for
all
the
have
record, please.
a hand-delivered letter.
Can you state your name for the record?
Bert Wall.
Okay.
I've been a resident of Tampa for decades. In 2004, I began the efforts to construct a new home near where I had lived, and I went through all the necessary procedures to obtain the permits needed as a homeowner contractor. Shortly thereafter, I had also been hired as a catastrophe adjuster, which required me to travel across the country to assist victims of hurricanes and other catastrophe damages, including Hurricanes Ivan, Charlie, Francis, Katrina, etc. Also, while trying to stay up to date on my various construction requirements, as well as fulfilling the duties of my job as a catastrophe adjuster, I was taking care of my ill mother and aunt when they had nobody else to turn to, nor did they have the affordable options to receive care that they needed. As a result, there were occasions when I was away from my residence and construction site for extended periods of time, and because of those absences, many permits and delays resulted in the city taking adverse actions against my property. Based on this history of delays, the city obtained a demolition order back in December of 2023, and I retained attorney Luke LaRoe to try and negotiate with the construction officials with the city. He was able to get an extension of time for me to try and get the necessary permits to finish construction. In April 2024, contrary to any assertions that the city made, failure to complete the construction rendered the structure unsafe, I provided the city several engineering reports that the proof that the structure was safe. Based on the agreed extension of time to complete the construction, we never completed or appealed. We didn't appeal the demolition order, and we hope to be treated in good faith by the city as we went through the construction process. When the April deadline came, I found out that the engineer we had helping us was unable to keep up due to serious medical emergencies in his family. So I had Mr. LaRoe file for an emergency stay on the demolition order, and that was granted. For the next several months, unfortunately, we've not been able to give fair treatment by the city construction services. My engineer was even told that my efforts were toast. And yesterday, a different judge lifted the stay and noted the demolition order and gave Mr. LaRoe time to amend the complaint. My fear is that while we try and represent these issues in court, the demolition order will be enforced, and my years of sacrifice will be destroyed. I have religiously followed the status of my application and permits, and they're all under review and pending imminent issuance, I believe. I recently paid the city over $700 to continue with this construction. Basically, I'm here asking for your help to ensure the vast amounts of money and time I've spent to the project are not demolished, and that some efforts to get the city's construction people to cooperate with me and let me finish the project are made. I'd like to reach out, and unless my request is reasonable, and possibility of me losing everything was imminent. I wouldn't reach out unless I didn't need your help, but stand
Thank
by
you.
for questions or phone calls.
Thank you, sir. Your public comment time is up. Okay. Now we're moving on to staff reports. Attorney Clinton Paris, Mr. McCray.
And Madam Chair, if I may?
Oh, yes, I would like
Can
to
you hear
say, Board Member Louis Vieira has joined us.
Yes, ma'am. And by the way, I'm in my son's room, so the Dawn of the Dead picture or poster, that's his, not mine. Just for
Okay,
the record.
no
So
problem.
I have stuff
You allowed it to
happening
be up there, you pay the bills.
Yep. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Tech
Morning.
problems.
Okay, Mr. McCray, let's lighten the room a little bit.
Good morning, Cedric McCray, Interim CRA Director. I have the pleasure of introducing the East Tampa CAC Chair, Mr. Paris, who has served on the CAC in East Tampa for roughly about 4 years, and inviting him up now to just provide an update on the East Tampa CRA and CAC.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Clinton Paris. I serve as the chairperson of the East Tampa CRA CAC. And the main purpose of this morning's presentation is to give you an update on some of the activities that we've engaged in, and also to share my final comments. I'm term limited at the end of this month. My term will expire as one of the last elected CAC representatives of the community. So with that being said, the first thing I want to update you all on is the community redevelopment plan. As you all are aware, the company of Furr, Mert, Wegman, and Banks Architects, PA, in conjunction with Professor Trent Green, have been selected to complete the East Tampa Community Redevelopment Plan update from the 2004 plan. So it is imperative that we get that done as quickly as possible. And I would like to note that during the process of doing the Strategic Action Plan update, which was done previously, we ran into some budget issues. And the main reason we ran into budget issues was there was a lack of diligent oversight in the process of what the consultant was providing. And so I challenge you all to make sure you're aware that at the end of the plan being presented, you don't get an extra bill added on the back end, as was attempted in that situation. But we stood firm at the CAC level and demanded accountability for those expenditures, since they were coming out of the funds that we have. The scope requires a robust public engagement and outreach through the community forums, East Tampa CAC meetings, workshops, mail, and online surveys. Continuously, there has been a disconnect with information and what is happening with the East Tampa CAC. And there have been efforts repeatedly during my tenure to bridge that communication gap. So I would challenge you all to be very critical of whatever information comes forward regarding what the plan is for engaging the community. If somebody tells you they're going to announce it on the internet, I can tell you right now, that's not going to work in the East Tampa community. It needs to be a much more on-the-ground process to engage the community, and I'm just hopeful that that can be accomplished. The other dynamic that's significant is the implementation piece. Plans are great, but if the plan isn't implemented, that's another part. And there's an old saying that what gets counted gets done. There has to be some objective measurement of the implementation of the plan. That way, there can be a continuous monitoring and making sure that what was set forth in the CRP plan, we don't end up 20 years later, like now, questioning why hasn't more been done. As the new update comes out, we can map out a measuring process so that at each update, you can see whether or not you're keeping up with the implementation process. But that should be also, I think, included in the plan. And it needs to be accurate and periodic so that everybody's informed. When I joined the CAC, it took probably a good 6 months for me to even figure out what was going on. Because of the historical information that was needed to make current decisions, you had to go back and piece together all the things that may have been discussed or may have happened in the past. And if you weren't able to do that diligently, it was really tough to make good, sound decisions in the moment. So that periodic measuring system, I think, needs to be in place for the CRP. The East Tampa Youth Program is another one of the great successes that I like to point out, but I think is one of our tragedies as well. That program services 36 kids. And I think that is an embarrassment and deplorable that we have a budget the size that we do, the largest CRA in the area, and we only service 36 youth through our summer youth program. I would challenge us to expand that program. The target number that I came up with was 100 students. Here's why I say that. I participated as a kid in Tampa in every opportunity the city gave out, from summer youth work programs to free lunch at the parks to you name it, the football, flag football teams, you name it. And those programs made a difference. And I like to think I'm paying that back now, my tax dollars that I pay into the city. But I would challenge that program of 36 youth to be expanded to at least 100. On June 10th through June to August 2nd is when the program is in place for the summer. And we all know an idle mind leads to trouble. The more kids we can keep active, the fewer kids that may get in trouble over the summer. There was a symposium on July 29th at the Suncoast Federal Credit Union with its corporate officers. And there were 2 tracks for first year and second year participants. They focused on their vocational skills, trades, soft skills, public speaking, event planning, and job opportunity exposure. And that job opportunity exposure piece, I think, is key. There should be a component in there that challenges every department in the city of Tampa to create an opportunity for those summer youth kids to come out and see the great work that's being done in the city of Tampa. Give them exposure to see what jobs are available for them in the future and maybe motivate them to be better students and come back and serve our community in that capacity.
Okay,
When the
Mr.
other
Parris,
success,
you're gonna have to wrap up within 1 minute.
this is a wrap.
Okay.
This is a 4-year wrap. I'm moving along. I'll speed
Okay,
it up.
Dragon, thank
Okay, the East Tampa Housing Program, another one of our successes, and we just recently launched the rehabilitation program, the housing rehabilitation renovation program. We received 201 applications, so we're looking forward to helping people get their homes refurbished. $420,000 expended for down payment assistance, which we continue to need to be aggressive in doing. $1,058,000 was expended for the emergency roof program. And with all the rain that we're having, this is really saving people's homes and damaging their homes. I'm almost done. Land acquisition. One thing that's not being made more of is land, and we need to buy as much land in East Tampa as we can before developers and our speculators come in. So I would encourage us to be very open-minded and aggressive with land acquisition. I want to commend staff in the last year or so. They're showing up regularly with opportunities, and we're looking to buy as much land in East Tampa as we can for future development.
Okay, Mr. Parris, thank you
Here
so
we
much
close.
for your.
30
Mr.
seconds.
Parris, would the board prefer for him to continue? We made new rules and we have time limitations, so
Can I have just 30 seconds?
we gave you 3 minutes extra. Go ahead and wrap it up.
30 seconds. All right.
Okay, thank you.
As I leave, one, I mentioned the land acquisition. I want to be creative with our youth. I want to ask that you appreciate the economic pressure in East Tampa and the decisions you're making, and also respect the input and communication that comes from the community as far as its decision making. And lastly, I want to really give a thank you to the interim director, Mr. Cedric McCray. He came into an impossible situation and has really stabilized what we're doing over in East Tampa, and I just want to commend him for that and ask you all continue to support his efforts.
Thank you for your report,
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Parris.
All right.
Appreciate you. Okay, Mr. McCray, so are we going to jump to 4, item 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning. For the record, Cedric McCray, interim CRA director. There was a request by, I believe, a motion by Councilwoman Hurtek to receive the job descriptions related to 2 positions that were slated to be advertised for our agency. The first one is the communication and community engagement position, and the second one was the operations and contract supervisor. And during our briefings, you should have received the job descriptions, and what I would request is that you all could return any comments that you have to us as a staff no later than Monday, September 16th. We will compile that information and then share it back with you, and can gladly take any questions at this time. And we do have some folks from Human Resources in case you have any procedural questions that I may not be able to answer.
Any online board members want to speak on this? Councilwoman Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I thank you so much, Mr. McCray. I appreciate that. The only thing that I want to ask is, do you feel that these job descriptions adequately give the information or have all of the information that you believe is necessary to fill the position?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, I've looked at these before, but I'll listen to other board members and make sure that we get that information to you by Monday.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other board members? Oh, Board Member Clendenin.
I know we're just talking about these two positions, but I have a question about what is our plans for the attorney position for the CRA?
We're going to address that under new business.
Under new business, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to bring this up under new business. I have reached out to Mr. Cliff Shepard, who is the attorney for the Florida Redevelopment Agency. He's probably the preeminent attorney on CRAs. He's who, if I have a question regarding CRA issues, it's who I call. He's willing to serve as our CRA counsel. He is willing to come to our next board meeting, October 10th, and he and I have been working through variations to the city standard form of legal services agreement to deal with that, and that should be on your agenda for October 10th.
Yeah, thank you.
And since you've raised the question, I do have his resume from his website to hand out to you all, so you have that. So,
thank you, Attorney Massey. Okay.
Can you leave one at my seat and Kelly will pick it up? Thank you.
Sure.
Director McCray?
So just yielding for any questions?
No more questions
No
on
more
that.
questions? Okay.
Yeah.
We can move on. The next item we have is from the Ybor CAC chair. It relates to the funding major arts projects, and I believe I did see. Come on up.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. Rich Simmons, Ybor City CAC Chair. I'm here to give a report on the arts in Ybor City. As we know, Ybor City is our entertainment district, but it's also our arts district. We have a very strong arts community there that is made up of local artists, tattoo artists, museums, cultural exhibits. Last meeting at our CAC, we had a meeting by the new City of Tampa Arts and Cultural Arts Coordinator, Corey Robinson. He outlined his grant plan for new arts in the city. Everyone at the CAC thought that information was wonderful. We look forward to working with him on getting anything that we could do to support the arts in Ybor City and move it forward. I also want to mention the Crest Contemporary. They're doing excellent work there to promote the arts in Ybor City, as well as the Ad Hoc Arts Group. Corey's grant process was well received. Some of the comments that we received on that, much like we had for infrastructure grants, some of the conversation was maybe there's a stepping of levels, of different levels for administrative review. Simpler, lower price grants for the arts could be at a more of a staff approval, and then higher approvals as needed for larger amounts. In the past, the YCDC and the CRA have supported arts through event sponsorships. Some groups that we've supported it with funds include Ybor Ballet, Fringe Fest, Gasparilla Movie Festival, to name a few. As you know, with the change of legislation, we can no longer support these events, and that's a little bit concerning for the CAC. And as these CRA dollars are now more prioritized for bricks and mortar type of projects. So that becomes a little bit more complicated when we reach out and talk about the art scene with that. This year, we were preparing to update the Community Redevelopment Plan and the Strategic Action Plans. And as we know, that once we start prioritizing these projects, the money kind of follows what the priorities are. So arts will be a priority as we begin to update the CRP and SRP this year and move that into something to allow funding for the arts in Ybor City. As I mentioned before, the performance in sponsoring events is no longer valid for CRA money. But the CAC discussed some ideas that we feel would be beneficial for the area. And these ideas could include murals. We've done a few in Ybor City, as you know, on the metal building along the Crosstown Expressway. And recently at the YCDC headquarters building, we did a mural on the side of that building. Some ideas that the committee mentioned was also placemaking and photo ops, selfie spots as the kids call it these days. So I think that's a unique opportunity to bring out some of the art in Ybor. General beautification of the district. The garage windows, the window display units on all the parking garages are always in a state of repair and they need some attention. So I think that's become a topic that we mentioned and discussed as a priority to keep those both at the Centro Ybor and the Noriega parking garage. An interesting point that we also talked about was graffiti abatement. TPD has issues and homeowners and business owners always have issues in repairing graffiti. They get code enforcement tags for this. Maybe the arts would include some murals or other graffiti things because as a general rule of thumb, from what I understand, they're less likely to be tagged by graffiti artists if there's actually somebody else's painted art on an object. We're also going to talk about crosswalks, intersections. The city has done many different programs there with painting crosswalks. And we also talked about installs, statues, or physical art, beautifying signal boxes, creating parks and green space, and of course maintenance of all these facilities. As you know, we are planning on doing an update to Centennial Park, so I think there's an opportunity there for some public art as well. In general, we've talked about affordable housing, and I think there's some priorities there for property acquisition. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look for, but I think that could certainly be incorporated with the art scene, maybe as temporary residences for artists, traveling artists. And we know that the art space that's coming before you is outside of our CRA district, so we can't use the CRA TIF funds for that, but we certainly support everything that's moving forward with that entertainment and that effort. And I think there's other things that we can do that would be similar to that within the CRA district. Due to limited public space in Ybor, I think the CAC is open to having public-private partnerships to allow these deals move forward to allow public art. I think that was in place, as we saw with the murals along the causeway, the crosstown, and along the YCDC building. So I think that's very well received by the CAC. And I think that's all I have for the arts there. And we look forward to working with you to contribute any ideas from the CIC up and from the CRA board to fund the arts in Ybor City.
Okay. Any questions from our board members online?
Here.
Board Member Carlson, yeah.
First of all, thank you for your leadership, long-time leadership in Ybor City and the creative leadership that you and your colleagues bring. You know, as you know, you talked about Ybor being the arts center. The arts are really coming back because folks are making an investment in it, and there's a renewed excitement about the arts. I'm saying everything you know, but the public may not know went away, and now Ybor's made a deliberate effort to bring the arts back in the last couple years. And in some ways, we've done in 2 years what it's taken other cities 10 or 20 years to do. And as other cities are coming in looking at us, they're really impressed with what's going on. And of course, a few developers have been very involved in it. I just want to say a couple things real fast. In St. Pete, you know, some of the artists in Ybor in the 90s moved to downtown St. Pete, but downtown St. Pete also had its own artists. And then those artists, because of gentrification, had to move to the warehouse district. And then suddenly, 10 or 15 years ago, there was gentrification around that. And so some enlightened business people got together with the artists. I helped a very small bit, and they bought up a bunch of land, and they've been adding to that land. And so they have space for 50 or 60 artists, plus outdoor space and retail space and other things that they've been able to accumulate. But the city partnered with the private sector to do that. And what's happened is that some of the artists in the surrounding areas have been gentrified out, but because that is owned by a nonprofit, they're not going to be gentrified out. And we also know, for anybody who doubts it, the arts are not only connected to an innovation economy, where the best and brightest people in software companies and digital analysis companies and others are artists, and they want to live and work in an artist environment. But we've seen in real estate development, places like St. Pete and Miami and New York and others. Dumbo area of New York is a great example where one developer bought a bunch of land and put arts in the middle, and the whole thing developed around it. So we know we need thriving artists, and we can't run them out. So the point I was going to make is that I hope that at some point we can find, I know we have art space that is some workspace and living space, but I hope also we can find just gallery space and workspace for artists, and that some of it can move into a nonprofit, and that we can help them either buy a piece of land or a building or an office condo or something. But I think long-term folks are worried. We have very enlightened property owners right now, but if somebody comes in and decides to take it out and monetize it, then we're going to lose the economic engine of the area. The last thing is there is someone told me in the arts community in Ybor, there's a glass artist that makes glass bricks, and they had suggested at one time using it for maybe some of the crosswalks or something like that. So the point is there are probably ways that we can put arts as an element without making it just a statue or a mural, where it's a smaller accent rather than something big. Thank you.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you very much. I'm laughing at myself as I heard your report, because it makes sense. And Ybor City is like a Ferris wheel. The more people that are on it, the more people want to get on it, and the faster it spins. What I mean by that, I was raised in Ybor City. Why did people leave? They left for many reasons. First of all, they want to blame everything on the expressway. That's halfway an excuse. But the cigar factories also closed down. American Can, Continental Can also closed down. So where were people going to work at? That's where all the industry was in Ybor City. They had restaurants and operations, little things. In fact, we even had feed stores. So you could feed your horse and your cow in your backyard. Those days are gone. But Ybor City keeps inventing itself. First it was dead. It had three things: tumbleweed, prostitutes, and drug addicts. Let's face it. Then came the artists. They built it up. And then somebody said, oh, that's good rent at a low price. We can go there. And they went. Then the artists had to leave because the price kept coming up. So it's changing again, and it will continue to change. When I see Ybor coming, when the Shaw project is complete, it's going to be more residential than anything else. And you're going to have the recoming of the original Ybor City coming back in a lot of ways. You're going to have much more street traffic. Why do we have street traffic? Nobody had the money to buy a car. Why do you have the streetcar that worked? That was the only means of transportation. So you have the need and the wants all together, and sometimes they're not in balance, so therefore you have, well, what am I doing here? So these are the things that happen in Ybor City. You know, we used to walk from 26th and 20th at Jefferson High School, Henry and Ola, and Euclid, and no one was late. Now you have all the amenities of a bus, and the bus is late. So you have things that have changed, but they really haven't changed. It's just a new way of saying, here we are. And in my opinion, it's going to come back big time, much bigger than we expect. It died the same time that downtown died, and downtown's being revived the same time Ybor City is being revived. So you have to have the connector. Now you're getting the connector, and let's see what happens. I expect it to be a much greater place, and even, I hate to admit this, even much higher price to go. Affordable housing is the hardest thing to do, because no house is affordable anymore. Thank you very much.
Board Member Clendenin, followed by Board Member Maniscalco.
I kind of want to echo what Councilman Carlson said and be supportive of that type of an agenda. I think in the previous CRA, you know, with the set-asides, the 30% set-asides, kind of expectations, I think especially in a place like Ybor and how important we place on art in this space, that we should be looking at creative solutions and for artists housing and display and workspace. And I think if we pursued that, it would be an economic catalyst for the broader area as well. You know, and I think Councilman Carlson, you know, frequently promotes what happened in St. Petersburg with their spaces. And I think it's definitely a model that we should be looking at in maybe a smaller scale than what they've done over there, because of course we don't have a lot of spaces in Ybor. Ybor is relatively small. Ybor, the two different CRAs there. But yeah, I really would like to see this as looking for creative solutions for art spaces, because again, it's not only does it make it a better place for the people that are living there, it's economic catalyst. It provides jobs and it provides that cultural enrichment that we're all looking for.
You know, I like what I hear from all my colleagues up here, and I agree with almost everything, especially with what Councilman Miranda said with regard to Ybor City, how it changes. You know, he did the Ferris wheel analogy, and looking at it historically, where Ybor was. I had this conversation yesterday with a gentleman in Ybor City that you probably know, and I said, what's coming to Ybor City is the new Renaissance, and it's going to be something that. And I use the word ancestors, but the generation from 100+ years ago, those first wave of immigrants, the people that built Ybor City, I think is something that they're going to be proud of, because with the shutting down of the cigar factories, the introduction of cigarettes, the elimination of hand rollers to machine rollers, he mentioned the Continental Can Company, you know, that industry left. The interstate came through, people left. I talked to many World War II veterans that came back from the service. They left because either they or their parents said, you know, go out somewhere where there's more land. Build yourself a new house. They either went to South Tampa, they went to Brandon, one went to Lutz. I mean, they went all over the place except Ybor City. And as one gentleman put it, we came back to Ybor City 50 years later, and we were sad. And we asked what happened. We left. A lot of people left. The interstate did a lot of damage, but it wasn't everything. But what's coming to Ybor City with Gasworks, with all the other projects, is so critical. It is the new Renaissance. But in all that, the arts are such a big economic driver. From here, any city. From here to Europe, any place in the world. But we have to have those artists. We have to have, you know, the affordability for those individuals to live in the community, to be able to walk, to be able to not have a car and say, I live, work, and play here. It's so critical, it's so important. But I think, as the conversation that I had yesterday with the gentleman, he said, morale is low. You know, we'd like to talk to you. I'd like to sit down and have a conversation. And I said, but it's going to get better. With the investments that are coming, I know things are changing, but it's always been an evolution there. I talked to my mom about this yesterday when my grandparents would go to businesses in the 1960s. It was Las Novedades, which is now part of Hotel Haya. It was the De La Grana Travel Agency on 7th Avenue, which we know Frank De La Grana because his officers were there, where the Green Iguana was at, and you know, and that's changed too. My grandmother would tell me stories, but they would tell me stories about the 1980s. You know, you could take a quarter, throw it down 7th Avenue in the middle of the day, and you hear it clinking down the street. It's not like that anymore. I met a lady who, she told me about her husband who bought a property on 7th Avenue for $80,000. I go, your husband bought a building for $80,000 in Ybor City in 1988, and he sold it. And I asked my family, I go, why didn't my grandfather buy? He would buy real estate back in the day. Why didn't he buy in Ybor City? It was a steal, because people weren't going to Ybor City. It wasn't what you think it is and what it became because of, and I don't want to name them, you know, because there's so many people, the people that invested in Ybor City and said, hey, let's lift this place up. But again, you know, brighter days are coming ahead. But in the center of it all, the arts projects, they're so critical and important to that economy, to that growth, and to that renaissance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone online? Okay. Thank you. Mr. McCray.
Good morning again, Cedric McCray, Interim CRA Director. I'm going to circle back to the Director's Report. First off, let me say thank you to the members of the CRA Board that came out on August 20th to support the rebricking and the ribbon cutting. That was greatly appreciated. With the report that you received, in an effort to centralize the staff, a lot of the staff will be relocating to the Tampa Municipal Office Building on the 2nd floor. That is being built out, and we will continue to have a presence in the various CRAs as well, and staff will have access to the East Tampa office for community outreach and engagement. And if we have staff related to any grants or that have questions about the applications and so on and so forth, we will still have access to that space in East Tampa. The project tracker was actually mentioned during public comment. That was requested to be in the monthly updates that you all receive. So we have updated that, and that has been put together by Ms. Martinez and her team. So we will continue to do that on a monthly basis. And if anyone has any questions related to that, please feel free to contact me with any questions. The Housing Rehabilitation and Renovation Program, I believe Attorney Paris mentioned that during his comments. And as of last Saturday, we had an event at Hannah, and we've distributed at least 201 applications. It may be more at this point, but Ms. Parks and her team have done a tremendous job in answering questions and pushing that out to the community at large, and looking forward to getting the ball rolling on that later this year. There is a couple of things that I would like to highlight. You all will be discussing the budget. There was one minor change or addition. We did increase the thresholds for the grants that are offered in Ybor 1 and Ybor 2. Ybor 1 went up to $75,000 and Ybor 2 went up to $50,000, and we wanted to make sure that they were in line with the grants that were being offered across all of the CRAs. And we do have one other item, and in review of the agreement, services agreement, the interim position is for a period of 90 days. So at some point we will have to discuss that process and what that looks like moving forward. And that concludes the director's report.
Questions? Any questions online? Board Member Hurtak, followed by Board Member Carlson.
I don't have a question. I just, I wanted to say publicly that earlier this week, we had a meeting with someone who actually said, who told us, and it was completely off topic, that they were that they had gotten feedback from the community that these new exterior and interior grants and the help from the staff has been amazing. And that the folks who got the help liked it so much that they're hoping to be able to share it with other communities. So I just wanted to share that. It's always nice to hear that what you've worked so hard on is getting good reception. So I just wanted to, again, thank staff publicly for that, and congratulations.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, Cedric, at the beginning you mentioned the project list, and I thanked you privately, and I thank you publicly for the new format. The detail is very helpful. These presentations have evolved in the few years that I've been here, but this is the most helpful format where you can quickly look down it. So thank you for that. And also thank you with all the change that happened. Thank you for bringing stability through this transition and good management so that we can continue moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, CRA Board Member Hurtak, for that. We have really focused on our customer service aspect with the restructuring of the grants program. So I want to say thank you to all of the managers and supervisors that have a hand in that, and the staff as well, and making sure that we're making contact with the applicants throughout the process, and trying to stay ahead of any questions or concerns they may have, so that we can have some success stories and cut some ribbons and do some groundbreakings in the near future.
Okay, Board Member Clendenin.
What is the status? Are we putting out are we working with Human Resources to put out an advertisement to fill the position permanently?
Are we discussing the CRA Economic Development Director position?
CRA Director position.
Yeah.
Your last meeting, there was a motion made for you all to make comments on that description.
Right.
I did receive some comments from Board Member Hurtak. I do have her changes in a red line format that I can hand out to you all today. But I think once that gets finalized, then we need to advertise. I think that would be the next step.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure we're not slipping, we don't slip behind on that. Thank you.
Yeah. The deadline was right after Labor Day.
Yeah.
That he asked for those changes, so he's gonna go with what he's already received. Yeah, we have it already.
Good morning, Abby Feely. I just wanted to make sure that we do set a deadline. I think there was a deadline set by your office,
Yes.
Chairwoman, but I'm still hearing discussion that maybe other members haven't looked at. So if we want to go ahead and set a deadline.
No, we've already set the deadline.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and publish then?
Yes.
Okay.
Board Member Hurtak did provide some feedback to our office that has been given to the attorney, and he's cleaning up some of the language that was previously used in the
And
job
I provided
description.
that cleanup language to the administration as well, so they
It's
have
been-
that, so. So
And,
if you-
and just, I mean, I know there was some discussion this morning on those two other positions and final comments being due on Monday. If there's discussion amongst the board today that they would like those extra couple days till Monday, we can do till Monday, but then we do want to go ahead and get that published and get that process moving forward.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. The only thing I would ask is that we get to see the edited version and approve it, because that's, I mean, we can say we want the changes, but I'd still like a chance to see what that finalized document looks like before it goes out. That is the job of the board.
Moving that to, the red highlights, the red strike throughs indicate what's coming out, and you can determine that way. We should not extend it for another month for that reason.
That is not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that we should all get a chance to look at it, and then if you want to put Monday as the deadline to make any additional changes to the red line version, that would be it. But then that would be, because you said, Mr. Massey, if you've given it to the administration, if the administration wants to make some changes, I'd like to be able to know what those changes are before we approve it to go out into the public.
I've not received any comment from the administration regarding.
Oh,
any
okay.
changes.
Well then, I guess Monday, we can, when you get all of them, maybe you can just send an email to us and we can just make sure that we approve of, I mean, I'd like a chance to look at it before it goes out to the public.
Board Member Clendenin.
So Monday is the deadline for suggested changes, and then we need a few days.
No, we already had that deadline. That deadline was after Labor Day. So here's the change.
That's why I'm confused about what was just said.
Yeah, we've already
So-
had the submission deadline.
So this document is the final document.
No, this is this with the red highlights.
So these changes. So,
Yeah.
Council, our board member Hurtak, do you understand? Did you get that part?
She did.
Okay, maybe. Well, then
did.
I'm slow because I
Yeah.
missed it.
Okay,
But
just for
again,
clarification.
it still take, apparently I was the only one that made edits, but again, if the administration had any changes, and Mr. Massey says there are no changes, so if this is the final, then okay.
Well, it wasn't up to the city staff to make any changes. HR, it was not their responsibility. They made that very clear. It is our responsibility, because we're the deciders of this. So these are the changes, and if you have any additional comments, say so by Monday. Agreed? Board Member Carlson?
Do you just, we're not gonna have another, if we wait to vote again, it'll be another month. Do you wanna go ahead and make a motion to accept this with a markup?
Well, you all need to take a look at it, though.
I just read it twice.
Okay. So how about, what is?
I'll make a motion to accept these edits as the final document.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the red line changes for the job description for the Community Redevelopment Director. Any discussion? Can I get a second? Who got the second? Carlson gave the second, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
It better be unanimous, you only have 4.
Yeah.
Well, we got two faces staring at us.
Well, we get to,
Hurtak,
Board Member Hurtak.
had voted no, is that correct?
She said no.
I voted yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Aye.
And
Aye.
the only thing clarifying comment I would make, if I receive any input from the administration regarding these changes, I will advise all of you all separately.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Vieira, did you have your hand up to say something, sir? You're on mute.
I read his lips, he said no.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Yes,
Thank
next item on the agenda, number 5, is relates, and there was conversations about the board having discussion as it relates to the communications RFP that was slated to be advertised, and the job descriptions that were provided to you all. And at this time, I guess you all wanted to have an open conversation
yes.
related to communications positions.
Yeah, Attorney Massey, can you address the,
Yeah, before we go into a
Yes.
long discussion about this, I do want to make sure the board realizes that by statute, really
Yes.
all the CRA funds can be used for is to disseminate information regarding slum clearance and community redevelopment activities. That is it.
Not branding strategy.
Correct.
Yes, and thank you for saying it up front. So, because I was going to ask you to talk about that a little bit, because it was a motion made by Board Member Carlson. Do you want to address it first, since it was your motion?
Yeah, I'm not gonna have that legal argument with him right now, but I disagree with that, obviously. We'll ask the new attorney and we'll go through that. Anyway, the issue here is that, this is my business, and $500,000 is an enormous amount of money for this agency to spend, if we were going to outsource it. And especially if we're not gonna include branding strategy, it should be like $200,000. What we're asking folks to do, we already have a logo. We might need them to set up some new social media channels, and promote those. We need them to send out press releases and organize, press conferences, other media events, put up signage, but none of that takes more than a couple $100,000 a year. All that is consistent. Beyond that, there's some branding and communication that has to do with each of the environments. Ybor City is really different than East Tampa, and even parts of Ybor and parts of East Tampa are different than others. And those are just two. So we need to figure out how to communicate with, even if we're just communicating our projects, we need to communicate the unique ways to communicate within our districts, but also eventually help promote redevelopment, talking about branding or the character of a community helps to attract redevelopment, and that's got to be included in this. And we can argue the legal aspects of it later. But what I would have done if I had $500,000, I'd take 200 and put it in just the basic communication of the CRA, and then if I had 300,000 more, I would hire different firms that specialized in the different areas, and ideally they would be located in the different areas. And I'd beta test it with maybe Ybor, East Tampa, maybe West Tampa if I had 3, and then see if it could roll out. But if we can't even do that, we certainly shouldn't have a budget of $500,000. The RFP was very well written. I think it includes everything we need. It's very well written. I'd rather hand that to the in-house people and give them a plan. In regard to the position that was discussed earlier, we need to make sure that we hire a person who has communication experience, not media experience. They might have media experience in their past, but they need communication experience, because there's a totally different skill set that's involved. If you have media experience, you're used to writing a story or producing a story. What we need is people who can think through the communication strategies and advise us on the best way to communicate with the community. For example, the re-bricking of Ybor City, we think of it as a positive. The investors in Ybor mostly think of it as a positive. As it was rolled out, there was a lot of angst in the community and other parts of the city that said, why are you wasting money on it by tearing apart a perfectly good road? And a communication strategist would think through that before they send it out. Anyway, if we get the right communication strategist, and if we had a more junior position that would be probably less than $80,000, ideally the person would be a graphic designer also. But if we had 2 people that would probably cost less than $200,000, then we don't need to outsource anything. And if we do outsource, we certainly don't need to outsource $500,000 at this time. I would, if we're going to continue with the outsourcing, I would say let's set a budget of $200,000 just to do the communication of the CRA, and then let's figure out what we need beyond that.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I hate to sound like that curmudgeon, but I'm having a difficult time, and I have had it since we've entered in this discussion. So I just want to go on the record. It's just it seems like bureaucratic creep or bloat in a lot of these things. And I mean, I get some of the points, but for the scale of what we're dealing with, adding the staff and the type of budget we're talking about, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Especially, we have, granted that, the CRAs are what the CRAs are, and we have, but we're fully contained within the city. There's resources available to us, and if we have to outsource to city resources, we should be doing that. It just seems like it's proposed is to spend an awful lot of money for very little return on that investment. especially when we're talking about $500,000. It's just that, again, the scale of what we're talking about. And if we were in the business of enterprise and making money, I think I would get it, but we're really not. We're in public service of renovations and of solving blight and solving, providing economic opportunity for people that live in these areas. So I just don't see the return on the investment for that much money.
Board Member Miranda.
I just want to echo what Mr. Clendenin said in a nice way, and I'm not disagreeing at all in principle with Mr. Carlson. However, Ybor City is not being invented. Ybor City is being reviewed within itself to get better. It never had the components you had until you had the CRA. It was just a village, you might say. But it's been now in the forefront of everywhere. I don't think Tampa used to be known as Ybor City one way and another. And I'm not saying it's the only way it was, no. But what I'm saying is to spend money on this kind of money on someone to tell you how good it is, then we got a problem. It has invented itself through time and effort, through 5 different mayors, making different challenges throughout the history of the city to get where it's at today. From Mayor Poe when he started, from Mayor Greco, from Mayor Freeman, from Mayor Martinez, from Mayor Aureo, from Mayor Friedman, they all had an interest in getting it done. So somewhere along the line, all those pieces came together. And it doesn't take a week or two, it takes years. But it's there. They had a streetcar, they lost a streetcar, now that they got the streetcar back. They had no residents living there, 0 just about. Now it's mostly residential. And will continue to prosper in both ways. So I have a feeling, I don't want to spend the money that I don't have to. And if somebody can't sell Ybor City, neither can an expert, because it's already selling itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any board members online want to feedback on that? Yes, Board Member Vieira, followed by Board Member Hurtak.
You're on mute.
No, we can't hear you. No, sir. Board Member Hurtak, and while you work out your volume issues. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that while I understand and I agree that I think $500,000 is probably too much, I disagree with the fact that we can necessarily stay in City House for this, because part of the reason that we're bringing this up is people would be upset not knowing where CRA dollars are being spent and the difference between CRA dollars and city dollars. And that was part of, I believe, while for the reason that Board Member Carlson brought this up to begin with is, we didn't have signs showing what we are spending money on, and we don't have. While we are a part of the city, we are a separate entity, and we can only spend money on certain issues. So I don't necessarily see it as bloat to add people to the CRA staff. I think this is important because the people are asking, this money is going toward what? And so we are able to share that story because we basically haven't been able to get this city to do that.
Okay. Board Member Vieira, do you have your microphone?
Nope. Can I add?
So you're really not at the meeting?
Get your son to come in there and fix
Yeah.
it for you, old man.
Okay, Board Member Carlson, another comment?
Yeah, just to be clear, it was not my idea to hold the RFP. I'm okay if we completely kill that. That was, my understanding from the previous staff is it came from the administration or something. I never recommended it. I always thought that we should handle it in-house. So if you all want to take it down to 0, that's fine. I was just saying we shouldn't spend $500,000. In terms of, we should set goals for whatever capacity we have, and we know that one of them is to inform people. We have folks, especially from East Tampa, come to us and say that that they don't know about what we're doing and they think we're not doing anything. And so we need signs clearly that say CRA that show that things are being done. The other thing I think is that we need to attract investment. And Ybor is way ahead of some other areas, but we need to help with some communication with that. To me, it would be great if we handled it with our own staff. We've outsourced it to the city for the last 5-6 years that I've been here, and that hasn't worked. It's not worked at all, because they have a different agenda than we have. We need to communicate to our unique constituency, and we need to do it in a way that's effective. The last few times communication have gone out, mostly they've been messed up in some way because they take the city's point of view and not the CRA's point of view. And I don't want to deal with the issues that inadvertently come up by not having the right strategy behind communication.
Okay.
Thank you.
Board Member Vieira, I think you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, this appears to have reached a resolution. It's funny, I always appreciate the idea here. Obviously, Councilman Carlson has a professional background in this area, and I think we all appreciate that, but I tend to go to the side of thinking that it's I don't want to say a solution in search of a problem, but in other words, it doesn't justify the amount of tax dollars that are being requested in there. We're inevitably going to get questions as elected officials. And there are things, as Councilman Clinton said, that the city staff can respond to, we can respond to, and everything. And then there's Attorney Massey's opinion, which obviously I'm going to pay that some level of deference and everything. But again, this appears to have reached a landing already. So thank you for staff for helping me with my microphone. Thank you.
Let me just add a couple things.
Sure.
I mean, there are clear opinions from both the Attorney General's office and from the Florida Redevelopment Association that we're not supposed to be using CRA dollars to market. Now, I believe part of what this position or this RFP was issued for is that we did have someone internally who was helping produce reports that are required by statute, information that's required, and to distribute those things. And that's what that RFP is for. I don't know if $500,000, that sounds like a lot of money for what we're required to do, but there are certain reporting requirements that are required, mandated by both the Special District Act and by the Community Redevelopment Act that we have to put out annually. We have to come up with an annual report of our activities, we have to come up with a plan annually, and all of those things have to be publicly on our website and out there in the community, and that's part of what I think this position is supposed to do, or that RFP is supposed to accomplish.
Understood. Excuse me, just a second, Board Member. Board Member Maniscalco, you want to
Yeah,
say
real quick, I was thinking about what I wanted to say, but, I'm looking at this from a campaign political point of view, because I never raise a lot of money. But whatever I do, or whatever the folks that I work with, what they do works because, I'm here. But, I work on shoestring, bare bones budgets. If I don't have to spend money, I try not to spend money. Either I do it myself, do it in-house, whatever it is. But what I've seen is, from the city's perspective, City of Tampa, when there's a major event like a Boom by the Bay, it's everywhere. Social media, you hear about it repeatedly, make sure people come out. Events that have taken place at, Curtis Dixon Park, Gasparilla is a major thing that everybody knows from here to out of state. So many people come here for it. Why don't we just do a better job from the City of Tampa perspective to say, this is what's happening. When I say bare bones shoestring budgets, it's put a sign up saying your CRA dollars at work. What is a CRA? It's a separate funding source. Like the bricks and Ybor City thing, I made the mistake of looking at the social media comments. And it's like, why don't you pave the streets in South Tampa? Why don't you do that? The money is restricted to Ybor City within those boundaries to do those things. Well, we need this fixed over here. The money is restricted to these things in this area. There's a lot of confusion. The point that I'm making is we don't have to spend a lot of money. We can better use our resources from the general not with CRA, but say this is how the City of Tampa functions. We have two boards. Today we're board members of the CRA. Tonight we'll be board members of the Tampa City Council. But let's just do a better job, from the administration. I'm not bashing anybody, but when we want to get a message out, we get a message out. When we're campaigning, we make sure to knock on all the doors and do the things, and because people win elections with very little money. It's not about, you need $1 million. I heard that from the first campaign I ran. You need this to win. Well, I've had this and I've won. The point I'm making is you don't have to spend a fortune. We don't have to hire this person and that person. You don't need this consultant. You don't need this manager to get the message out. When we want to, we can. Sometimes we get the benefit of the media. A newspaper picks up a story. You know, we get Wallet Hub says Tampa is ranked whatever. The Tampa Bay Times has written that such and such is happening. You know, that's earned media in many ways. You don't have to pay for it most of the time. I'm just saying, you know, Councilmember Carlson said, you know, I don't care if we kill the RFP. Do we really need to spend this money and put it out there when we can just do a better job from within? I mean, when you want something, you find ways to achieve your goal without, you know, all the craziness in play and having to throw away money. Mr. Massey mentioned, you know, the CRA is very clear in his interpretation of how money is to be spent. I just think we just need to do a better marketing job from what we have already and take it from there. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. Let me just say something. As board chair, I want to make sure that what's important to me is that we are in compliance with CRA rules and regulations. Yeah. So that's the primary goal. And you wanted to say something, Mr. McCray?
Yes, I just wanted to simply share, thank you,
Go ahead.
Chair Henderson. Wanted to share that the impetus of the RFP was to assist. If you remember, over the last year and a half, 2 years, Ms. Parks had served as our communications person. And that position.
Who does she work for? CRA?
CRA,
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct, yes. She was in-house.
Okay.
And, but it was very challenging for her to
Exactly.
you know, multitask and handle all of the communication across all of our CRA areas. Mm-hmm. So, and there were other CACs and CRA participants, volunteers that said, hey, we'd like to have the same thing that another CRA has as it relates to communications and outreach, which was somewhat more robust than other CRAs. Right. So to create a level of equity, that was the impetus of the RFP to service everyone across the board. There are several projects related to community engagement that we're going to be doing in line with the policies and that you all approved last year. And you know, so to have an entity as we look forward to doing our annual report and other information sharing, it would be helpful to have an entity in place that we could farm that information to and actually have some check-ins with to communicate what's going on across the CRAs. I will tell you that we have had conversations with Mr. Smith as it relates to how we can better work together, and I think that we've taken some positive steps. And
who is Mr. Smith, Mr. McCray?
Adam Smith.
Okay.
Adam Smith. And the event on August 20th, the bricking, you may have seen that some of the format was a little different, and that was based on some of that conversation and suggestions from members of the CRA board. So, you know, we are improving that relationship, and I want to say thank you to Mr. Smith and Jennifer Holton for their assistance in getting that word out. Okay.
Ms. Feely.
Thank you. May I just piggyback on some of what Mr. McCray just said? This RFP did come through that direction to get dedicated resources for CRA-wide communications. That being said, in hearing council's discussion this morning, a couple thoughts come to mind. One is, if you think it's too much, I mean, I think it was going out for requests for proposals up to that much. If that is not the desire, you know, that amount could be brought down. Or as also discussed, that path of using the RFP could go away and we could look at putting positions on dedicated positions. I think as has been raised by this board in a number of different areas, when you have shared resources, sometimes it's not as clear as who those positions are serving and ensuring that the funds that are supporting them are directly being spent within the CRA. So I think you have a couple options this morning on how you would like to proceed in getting this done. Ms. Parks has moved to housing and leading that effort. So right now within the CRA house of staff and the team, there is not a dedicated resource that is serving in this capacity or even could be altered to serve in the direction that you're wishing to go in this communications realm. So that being said, I think you have some options, but we do want to try to make progress on this whichever way it's the board's pleasure to move forward today.
Yeah. I remember distinctly this conversation because the highlight was, why does Ybor City get all of this marketing and, other CRAs do not? So this was what was presented at that time. Attorney Massey, yes.
A couple.
Followed by board member.
I've had my hand up for quite some time.
Sorry.
You know what? I apologize, board member Hurtak.
Thank you, because that's kind of what I wanted to say was the entire impetus of this was one CRA was paying for this.
Yes.
And I believe it was in the 6-figure range. So if we had done 6 figures for all 8 CRAs, we would be spending a lot more money. Not that I disagree. I don't think we need to spend $500,000. But in addition, if you looked at the items in on-base, there are 2 positions and the job descriptions that kind of go along with this. And I think that is an area where we can start. The role of the community development coordinator and a role of a digital media support coordinator. Maybe we can modify those a bit to handle more communication. But Attorney Massey is not wrong. There's a lot of communication, and by communication, we mean report writing that is required by the state. So a lot of what Ms. Parks was doing, no one's doing it right now. And instead, people are given more work to do, and that's just not fair or acceptable. We need to be able to get another person who can focus on this. And as was said before, she did a very good job, but even then it was too much because there are 8 different CRAs she's trying to please. So I do believe that looking at these 2 positions and maybe modifying them and seeing how we can turn them both toward communication a bit more, I think would be incredibly helpful.
Thank you. Attorney Massey and then board member.
I apologize for interrupting the conversation, but I think kind of what the board needs to focus on is whether these services should be done in-house or outsourced, or does it need a big combination of them? The one thing I would caution the board is that instead of talking in terms of branding and marketing, it is you're talking about communication and required reporting. That's really what we're talking about, not branding and marketing.
Correct, within the CRA rules. Board member Carlson, you wanted to make a motion?
Yeah, but the one thing I want to respond to that, and we'll talk about the branding thing another time, but this cannot be a compliance job. We need proactive communication with constituents. We talked about putting signs up. Somebody's got to do that. Somebody's got to come with the idea. Somebody's got to have it produced, and somebody's got to put the sign up. And just basic things like that. It might not be a compliance issue, but it needs to be done so that the community knows. I think this can be handled in-house. That's what I've always said. I always said that to staff. It wasn't our idea to take it outsource. I understand kind of where it came from, but we don't need it, especially with the budgets that we have right now. We have 2 or 3 positions in the budget that are related to communication. Ms. Parks was a great person that was put in a position that didn't match the skill set also. In housing, she's phenomenal, and she's getting way beyond her pay set done in that area. But as far as I can tell, I haven't seen her resume, but as far as I can tell, she doesn't have 20 years of communication management experience, which is what we need for the senior level communication person. And so we need to make sure that we're not just hiring somebody to fill a box or somebody that, we need to make sure that we really hire that. In the case of Ms. Parks, now she's a superstar in the housing area, and we look forward to working with her on that. So anyway, I know we don't have to do this, but I'd like to make a motion to affirmatively thank staff for putting together the RFP and just make a decision that at this time we would not like to outsource or utilize the RFP.
Okay. We have a
Motion
second.
to amend.
Board member Hurtak, you're recognized. I saw your hand.
Thank you. What I would like to amend to that is, or maybe this is a separate motion, but to take those 2 job descriptions that were attached to this item and possibly work with staff to modify them to fit what we need.
Board Member Moran?
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
does that, would that be able to satisfy what we're looking for? Or would we need a third position on top of these two?
I think the 2 would be a good start.
Okay, now do you believe we need to modify any of the job descriptions to get that done?
Maybe one of them will need to be tweaked a little bit.
Okay,
Didn't we cover this under number 4, though? Is it?
no, this is number 5.
No, but
These
if-
are different
If
jobs.
we reject this RFP, are we rejecting those 2 positions, or?
No.
No.
So we can
No.
reject, maybe what we could do is we could just thank the staff and reject this RFP, and then separately you could make a motion about the 2 positions.
Okay, I'll do that.
I think your motion covers
Well, your
both.
motion covers. State your motion again.
Just would like to make a motion for the board to affirmatively thank staff for all the time that they put together on this, and to make the decision that for now, we're not going to utilize the RFP and we're not going to outsource.
And there was a second by
Second by
Board
Mr.
Member Maniscalco. Okay, so, are you accepting the amendment, or are you withdrawing that
I
amendment?
was suggesting that she make a separate motion.
Okay,
I'm gonna make a separate motion.
thank you. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Board Member Hurtak.
I'd like to make a motion. Mr. McCray, how long would it take to modify that job description?
Which job?
I'm assuming you're talking about the
two
social
within
media
the
job
RFP.
description?
I would ask for at least 2 weeks.
Okay, so can we go forward in posting the first one, the communication development coordinator, and wait to do the digital media support coordinator until that's updated with more communications language?
Yes.
Okay, then I motion that we bring the digital media support coordinator, that Mr. McCray and his team edit that job description and bring it back to us in October.
Okay.
But move forward with the other position to be put out.
That's currently in the that's listed in the RFP, as is.
It's not in the
not in there.
RFP. It is separate. It is a separate portion. It's not part of the RFP.
There are two jobs.
There's 2 jobs.
Apart from the RFP, there are 2 open positions that are being proposed by staff, and so she's wanting us to go ahead and post, I think, one of the positions and then hold the other for you all to review the description.
I see,
on.
okay. Board
Yeah,
Member
I don't know why
As
these two
long
are
as
put
those
together, I think it's
positions are
confusing,
not
but
what
either
we're
way.
discussing in the motion that was just passed.
Okay,
Made by
it's not a
Mr.
part.
Carlson, second by Mr. Maniscalco, passed unanimous by the board, I'm fine. But if it is, I'm not.
Okay, it's not part of that.
No.
Okay. So the motion, did the motion get a second for Board Member Hurtak's motion about the 2 positions, one being advertised now and then revising which one is going to be under revision?
The one that's going to be under revision is the digital media support
Okay.
coordinator. That needs to be more focused on communication.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
I'll say.
Second for discussion. Board Member Clendenin.
I am lost, dazed, and confused as where we are.
We've eliminated the RFP.
So we've eliminated the RFP, but we still have these, we're talking about 4 positions?
No.
Because we have a couple
Two.
vacant?
No,
Okay,
just
these
two
are
we've
2 new,
already-
these are 2 new on top, okay, so I've got these lists of vacancies. Are the positions you're talking about included on these?
Yes.
Yes.
They are.
There's no digital, there's nothing here listed for digital, and what's the other one you're talking about? So we have.
These were in our packets, y'all.
I know, I read it, but
Community development coordinator.
I understand, but again, through all this conversation, I've lost track of what are we adding? I mean, is it just me?
We're not adding any.
We're not adding.
These were in.
Okay,
See,
so,
it's right here.
oh,
Digital Media Support Coordinator.
well, again, but this is not this, these are not these vacant positions up here. These are
Yeah,
different. So we've got these positions, but then this is down here, but we don't, what, these are vacant. Right now, we have a CRA Communication Engagement Manager that is vacant. Are any of these positions that?
That's the senior position, as I understand it.
So how many positions are we talking about? I
And
mean,
then there, can you show us, maybe our budget advisor can just tell us on this list where, and maybe show the list on the
So
overhead.
what was provided in the information that you received, separate and apart from the RFP, were two positions related to communications and outreach and engagement.
So we're talking a total of 4 positions then?
No, let him finish.
Just two. And we received that information following our meeting with Mr. Smith. And that would essentially, potentially fill the conversation related to CRA Board Member Carlson with the 2 positions as it relates to a digital media staff person and the communications engagement. So those are the 2 positions that you all have listed there in your packet.
So all she's doing is affirming those 2 positions, asking one of them to be advertised now and the other one
And then the
to
digital media be
edited.
updated.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and you seconded.
Because right now, no one is doing the communication work that Ms. Parks was doing. And if we don't have someone doing
have the
that,
report.
we are simply adding that work to positions that already exist, and those people are already working their job.
Right. Okay.
Well,
Our budget analyst would like to speak.
I'd just like to come up for a minute because I do think that maybe
Yes.
just a little confusion.
State your name
So,
for the record,
Hager
please.
Kapasky, City Council Budget Analyst. So in prepping for this, there had been some additional.
Why don't you throw that up on the almost
Yeah, there
everybody?
had been some, well, it has.
Oh, you're right.
Let her do her thing, Mr. Clinton.
There had been some additional job descriptions included, specifically the CRA Communication and Engagement Manager, and then there was a CRA Contracts and Development Manager. I think the dialogue right now, the immediate discussion has to do with these 2 positions, which are also open, Community Development Coordinator and Digital Media Support Coordinator. My point was, since you're having a dialogue about positions, needs, what do we have in the budget, it was a good opportunity to understand that these other positions exist, and in some way, do they fold into any part of supporting this particular effort?
Thank you. That's my, you just hit the nail on
Why
the
that was
head.
brought forward. So, again, I don't know if you are in the position where you really want to talk about the 2 manager levels. One of them implied by title that it may be have something to do with engagement, which is why I wanted you to address
So
that.
rather than workshop this here, can I make a motion to?
You are recognized, Board Member Clendenin.
So rather than workshop this here, can we have a motion to
We have a
continue?
motion on the floor right now.
Okay, can I amend this motion to continue this to the next meeting? I'd like to, so that we, because this is, I don't know if it's productive to do this at this point. Like, we could have subsequent briefings and become a little bit better informed about where we're at. I think we'd make a better decision with a little bit more information.
Board Member Hurtak.
Obviously, it sounds like people need more time with this, so I will amend my motion to continue these 2 positions, but in the interim, to have Mr. McCray and his staff modify those positions to what he believes would be necessary to handle communications for the CRA.
Right. And maybe we can ask staff for the, what do you call it? The service agreement. There is a service agreement for communication, right? From, for CRA, isn't there a communication service agreement?
There's a general services agreement about.
For communication?
It doesn't deal directly with communications. It deals with city services in all different areas. It's a generic contract,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah, I would like to see that so that we can.
It's part of your agenda today, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the last thing in our agenda.
Madam Chair.
Board Member Carlson.
Board Member Hurtak, could you just simply make the motion to add to the next month's agenda an item that will seek approval on those 2 positions? Then, because we don't have an item to continue, so if we just put those 2 on the agenda, then we can discuss them.
Okay, then I will withdraw my current motion and make the motion to put the 2 positions focused on development and communications. Currently, they are the Community Development Coordinator and the Digital Media Support Coordinator.
Yeah.
I ask that staff modify those to include communication and bring them to our October meeting, but meet with us individually prior to that to explain the strategy.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that?
No,
Board Member
I just want to
Miranda.
clarify where we're at, Madam Chair. The bottom part of the 3 says Community Development Coordinator, and it says about the funding, which rows, where it's coming from. But then I noticed in the 100568, that's the number that was given to it, that's already been assigned to someone with a certain salary. So were we talking about who's going to pay for the salary or what?
These would be CRA positions that would be funded by the CRA. They would not come out of the city budget.
Okay.
I think the question is whether you want to move forward with these positions or not, and whether the job description needs to be tweaked or altered and modified. I think that's what we're
Yeah,
talking
because
about.
the other 2 I don't find.
That's the point of this motion, to bring it forward so we can talk about it next month
That's
and
fine.
stop talking about it now.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Okay, motion carries. Did you get who the second on that, Ms. Soto? Yes, okay.
Could I
Board
add-
Member Carlson?
I think, I would like for clarity, and I don't know how many times Morris is gonna be back, but I would like to make a
This may be the
motion.
last time we see him.
I would like to make a motion to ask Morris to send us, before he leaves, maybe a one-page document describing, what he believes are the limits to what, the CRA can do in terms of communication and marketing. And he cited some case law, if he could put that in there. And then, but at least we have that on record. We have his warning and.
Well, and
then
not
we can
only
look-
my warning, but your new CRA attorney has issued an opinion letter as the FRA attorney,
Yeah.
basically, that says the same thing. So I will provide you his
That
letter
comment.
to all
Yeah.
the redevelopment agencies and the Attorney General opinion, so I can do that. I'm happy to do
Okay,
that.
thank you. So do you need, you don't need a
Second.
motion for that, do you?
Second. Yeah.
For him to provide it? You want him to provide that? Will
I'm
you
sure he
accept
will,
that?
but just for the formality.
Well, he said he wanted him to write a one-page summary. Will you accept the?
Yeah, just to ask, a motion to ask the CRA attorney to provide
Second.
information regarding the limits to, what we can do in communication.
Okay, there's a second by Miranda. Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I asked that that be folded into the last motion so that we're talking about communication, or as one item in October. Is that okay?
I'm not asking for it to be on the agenda, just that he sent it to us so we can look at it.
Okay.
So why does that have to be a motion? Why can't he just give it to us? I'm just
You
curious.
can, but I already made a motion.
I
so-
know, but I'm just wondering why we do that.
I'm happy either way. You will get the information, I promise. So-
Okay.
I just wanted, what I was trying to do is give him a chance to disagree and, or to put that on the record. I'm gonna use that, and if this other attorney has similar thoughts, I'm gonna use that to talk to my own attorneys to find out what they think the limits are. Because, I think what we need to do is figure out, sure, there are boundaries of where we can go, but we need to find out what we can do within that. And for sure, we know we can put up a sign with a CRA logo. But what are the limits of what we can do is what I'm more interested in. If somebody says you can't do marketing, what does that mean?
Okay,
If
understood.
it says you can't run an ad in Chicago during the winter to encourage people to buy property in Ybor City, if that is specifically prohibited, then we know what the limits are. But I'd like to know more specifically, if you just say branding is not included, that means we can't put a CRA logo up. So what does branding mean? What are the limits of it? And if that exists, then we'll look at it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving forward. Did we take a vote on that? Yeah, we did. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed for this communication to come from the attorney? Thank you. Okay, number 6, item number 6.
Yes, I'd like to bring forward Mr. Evan Johnson.
Interim planning director.
Oh, thank
No
you.
kids today, no babysitting?
No, she may be here this evening for your council meeting, so.
Okay.
Evan Johnson, interim city planning director, and I actually have a couple of slides just to guide the conversation that I want to put on the Elmo. So this is my first time using the Elmo, so
Oh, you did a good job.
we'll see how I do. I'm not gonna lie, I did ask people what to do.
That's a good
Perfect.
start.
It's always a good start to ask for expert advice. The request from the board was to come back and give you an update on the Army-Navy Royal Lot RFP process. And so for those who are, it's been a while since we've talked about this in a public forum, so for those in the TV.
Can't see it.
Oh,
Oh, how does that work for our members that are online?
Thank you, we can see it now.
okay.
Thank you.
So it's been a few months since we were here last talking about this particular RFP. So for those watching on TV, and just as a reminder to those in the audience, the site that we are talking about is basically 4 acres right here. It is in green on this image. About an acre of it was purchased by the CRA. That's the Army-Navy store that is still out there now, the building. To the west here is a red area that is labeled as the Ashley Drive reconfiguration, which is a very basic way to talk about a very important grant that the city received from the federal government through Reconnecting Communities to modify the ramp coming off the interstate to essentially bring the road down to the ground to grade sooner and to increase that east-west connectivity. So it's really a transformative improvement that will be happening in this area. The other items that just wanted to point out was we have the potential streetcar extension. I know that's been in the news again recently as far as moving forward with those discussions. That will be coming down Tampa Street, and ultimately will be passing right in front of the front door of this particular redevelopment site. Also important to know that Hart has the BRT proposal, which, in their concepts, they have a stop right at Royal Street. So that would also be something where the BRT could connect to this area. And the last couple things I just want to point out, of course, you have the Riverwalk to the west here, but also we've got important cultural centers with CRAs and John F. Germany Library, and then Marion Street just to the east 2 blocks, which is basically Hart's major transfer center for its entire system. So there's lots of not only opportunities in this area for this development, but there's also a lot of complexities around planning for it. And so I just kind of wanted to give that context as I move forward with these slides. So this is very similar to a slide you all saw when I was last here, but just some quick key project elements. The downtown CRA plan is in the process of being updated. I believe you all will be seeing it in the next month or two. We want to make sure that we're consistent with that. Housing is key, serving a variety of income levels, through whether that be market level or different levels of affordability. This is one of those opportunities where Tampa Street is a DOT roadway, but between the work going on with Ashley and the fact that we own the frontage on Tampa Street itself, this is a really big opportunity to create some actual really nice urban design elements in that part of downtown, which has been neglected for some time now. Not to bring up community branding elements again, but that is going to be part of the request that we send out, because ultimately by the time this is done, we're talking about a significant number of units, and this is really going to be kind of a neighborhood, an urban neighborhood within the downtown. The development criteria, we discussed these at our last presentation, and so I'm just going to walk you through and give you a little idea of where we're at with the updates. So 4 main categories that our current draft RFP is structured around. First is housing affordability. So as our minimum number of units that is currently being discussed was 750, and that's what we brought up last time during our discussion with you all. The affordability requirements, when we talked with you all, we were given direction to make sure that we increased the percentage that we were asking for.
Yes.
It is a draft, but right now we're at 50% set aside, and those are broken down between under 80 and the 80 to 140. I believe the Rome Yard was 60, and they may have gotten a little bit more than 60 in their final agreements, but that's where the RFP was listed at as well. Sustainability elements, so whether that's certification for the building, that could be LEED, that could be Energy Star certification, making sure that the buildings are designed to be as efficient as possible. Alternative power generation, again, also that could be solar integrated into the site. There's potential opportunities. There's a lot of weird blocks and shapes of the site itself. So we think there might even be some opportunities for, in some of these leftover parcels or pieces, for some solar, even if just for a demonstration of downtown. Tree protection is always going to be important. As you all know, you deal with those issues a lot. And then the public realm design, which is that urban design that I mentioned on the previous slide. More specifically about the mobility improvements themselves, I think the biggest challenge will be not only the streetcar and how it needs to be integrated or how we interact with it, but also then you're bringing in potential for a BRT connection. And is there something else that is needed more than just another BRT bus stop? Is there some other level of amenity that we could be considering as part of the request for proposals? And so we've had some conversations with Hart, and we certainly will talk to them again before we finalize an RFP, just to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page with those ideas. Again, we're not trying to, with the exception of the housing affordability element, we're really not trying to hem in any proposal developer to too specific a proposal. We really want to encourage flexibility and creativity as much as possible. The last part of the criteria I wanted to talk a little bit about were the other community uses. Currently, the draft speaks to neighborhood serving services or retail, and hopefully focused on some of the residents that are actually being brought in, those who may need the affordable housing amenities, but also arts housing, and this is probably not the best way to speak about like a conservatory type housing. Board member Clendenin brought this up at our last meeting when I was here to present. And essentially what we have talked about so far is not necessarily requiring it, but trying to find ways using through the scoring system or otherwise to incentivize showing some level of, dormitory style or whatever type housing for service of our art institutions downtown. I think you were even talking a little bit about it earlier in the Ybor CRA, that idea of like, how can you provide housing for some of these artist performers that maybe even just coming through. So that is something that we're working on language to kind of incentivize that, but we didn't want to require it outright per se. Again, housing's really the only one we're trying to draw a pretty bold line around. One last slide for you this morning before questions. Our next steps. So we have had, as you know, we have had quite a lot of leadership and staffing changes over the last few months. And partly because of that, I am working with department heads and department leaders to bring folks back together to really take one last detailed look at the criteria, the language that we're using, and really, frankly, when I think of what mobility's been doing in those projects, is really just to understand what is the status of the design and the direction that they're going. There's two things that come to mind. Obviously, that western piece with Ashley, there may be some additional right-of-way land that is actually, if they may narrow it. There may be some room over there for, maybe it's nice sidewalks that could be associated with the development. But there's also DOT's got some design in process that's going to take a little strip on the north end of the site, likely, for their new reconfiguration of the on-off ramp as well. So I just want to get the latest, greatest information from those department leaders so that we have all of that incorporated into the RFP, particularly since I'm trying to catch up with some of these conversations that may have happened that I wasn't aware of previously. So I'm really trying to work with everybody to make sure all the boxes are checked. The advertisement for the request for proposals, once it's all finished and purchasing is signed off on the language. With Rome Yard, it was a 60-day advertisement. So I would say it's going to be 60 days, possibly more, but I wouldn't expect it to be less just from our recent experience. So at that point, we would put it out, proposals are going to come in, and then you get to start what is a review process, first of proposals, and this will be a significant amount of due diligence on the city's part, as you're aware, to review legal issues, financial issues, and the fact that folks have to have the financial capacity for this type of project. And then there likely will be shortlist presentations as well to the selection committee. So that is a process to get to what hopefully will be that award and that contract that we will bring back to the city council. And with that, I'm here for questions.
Board Member Miranda, followed by Board Member Clendenin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you for your
Okay,
update on the report.
excuse me just a second. Can you take that down so that I can see the hands of our online board members? I think I heard her say something.
Yeah, this is my motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. John, for your report. And we've owned that land there now for years. And the problem that I see is that the longer we hold it, the less some people have a place to live. And you're right about finding out what this potential streetcar expansion is going to be from Hart. However, how much is that going to cost, and when is it coming in the drawing boards, and when is it ever going to get built? So we can't wait forever for a answer from our board, Hart, to find out what the potential time is, what extension time they need, and what the money, and how they're going to fund that streetcar. So it's incumbent of us to keep building for what we need. That's affordable housing. And I'm not saying to elevate and proceed without doing what your neighbors are doing. No, not so. But what I'm asking you to do is make sure that you get this project on the drawing boards so people can have a place to live, regardless of what Hart's going to do, because we can certainly build this, because a train, that's what it is, a streetcar is a train going at a slow rate, can always be designed in the middle of the street. And have some land left over so you can have yourself a place where people, during the season that we have, we used to have 2 seasons in Tampa, Christmas and summer. Now you got rain and heat. And that's the way it is. And the problem we have is we haven't taken care of nature, and we never will, because we want to get somewhere quicker and faster and better at a cheaper price. Nature is not cheap, it's expensive, and we have to fix nature. But I appreciate what you're saying, but my advice is get your ducks in a row to build, because that line may or may not come in the next 10 years. Thank you.
And if I may, I just wanted to say, I absolutely agree, and I, just for clarification, I wasn't implying that we would want to wait for that, but we certainly want to make sure that we've at least had the conversation and are accounting for it in any discussion we have. I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you.
I'll start with answering some of Councilman Miranda. The streetcar is actually more of a city construction project, not Hart. We work through Hart because they're a flow-through organization, but it's something that the city is doing. I have to say, I believe that we're on a pace that we should start riding a streetcar on this proposed extension within 5 or 6 years. The RFP is out now, so it's moving forward. I mean, the streetcar is moving forward. So there's some challenges, but there's some solutions, and I think the administration and Vic are doing a good job in presenting that program. On the housing component, as you brought up, I've been an advocate. The CRAs is a city-owned asset, and we're investing a lot of money into that asset. The conservatory is an important part, and one of their challenges, just like we have housing challenges everywhere, is housing for the students that are going to the conservatory there. They're not looking for a lot of asset. They're just like, I think they want to house 20 people, which is, and they don't have to all be individual units, but I think we do need to have a set aside because of the proximity. There's no other opportunity. Like this would be a missed opportunity if we don't get this in this project. I mean, we're only talking housing like 20 people and less units than that of 750, but making sure that we have a set aside to be able to accommodate that. Again, it's just, we'll never have this opportunity to have this again, to be able to have within walking distance of the CRAs and their needs, and to be able to enhance that experience. Also, the demographic that it brings to downtown as far as the mix of folks that we're trying to encourage. These will all be young people, so that actually adds something as well, something to the community. So I definitely do want to see that as a requirement that we have a set aside for those units. So that, again, it's a really statistically small number of when we're talking about a 750. The other thing is on the sidewalks. I think when we talk about tree retention and all, ensuring that this project has the type of standard sidewalks that we're seeing in these developments that we see Darrell bringing forward and we've seen happening in Tampa Heights, so that it can accommodate trees, so the sidewalks are wide enough that we can have tree plantings along this. I think that's going to be for a much more livable community and walkable, especially as we're investing in that Ashley Street project of bringing that street down and having that east-west connectivity. It doesn't matter if you have connectivity if it's not really good and walkable and pedestrian friendly. So I would definitely want to make sure that we have those new standards of sidewalks, of that 12-foot sidewalk, or to be able to accommodate trees. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I'm not sure. I think there was an issue legally about being able to do set-asides for a particular institution, but I will leave that to Mr. Massey. But I think what we could do is look at single resident occupancy, definitely, as something that we'd like to see, or at least I would like to see, because that kind of does the same thing. But my question is to make sure that in this proposal, there is language about the ability to put this in a CLT or to make it perpetually affordable. Mr. Johnson, do you have?
Currently, the discussion that we've been having would be similar to what we did with the Rome Yard, which was 50 years minimum. I would say it's 50 years for all the rentals, and then I believe that there is a small component of potential fee simple townhomes. And those would be, I think, a minimum of 15 with some resale requirements. But no, right now it's 50 years is what we have.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that's enough. From my understanding, I mean, this is our land, and the goal of this is to have affordable housing. And so I believe it should be in perpetuity, or the ability to go into a community land trust, one or the other. And I think that if we aren't doing that, then we aren't following the mandate of the CRA.
Board Member Carlson, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Yes. Followed by Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, just on that point, the city is doing a great job of presenting this to the CRA board, although we have two hats. This is the CRA board, and you all are providing a lot of transparency on this, and so I appreciate that. When we get to the end of it, we need to make sure we define what's the CRA's role. And I think of the different parcels of land, there's one smaller piece of it that was bought by the CRA, and so our CRA board influences over that piece. And then in that piece, what she said is right. Like, we need to make sure we're not only following the law, if there's a way we can exceed it, great. But CRA doesn't have necessarily influence over everything. And the same thing in terms of staff. This is a city-led project with city staff. CRA, I think the CRA's limit of involvement should be just to make sure that the city is adhering and the developers are adhering to that rule. But, there have been a lot of, without going through details, there have been a lot of concerns in the past about RFPs that were handled. And developers have said, look, if the city puts out an RFP for 30 days, that's not enough time. It just shows that they've already got somebody in mind. Right. And there are several examples of that where the private sector feels like land was sold below market value, or that the city had been talking to one developer for a long time. And so you said 60 days. I was going to ask that at least 60 days, 90 days better, because it's very expensive for the developers to put together these proposals. And I know you've had calls over time, but there's been some bad information been given out by some of your predecessors about how this information, I should say by prior employees, about how this would go forward. So we need to make sure there's plenty of time that a developer can respond. We need to make sure whatever conversations have happened with any developers, ideally they would be made public, and that everybody knows it's really open to everyone, and the way it's set up and the way it's communicated, and then in the criteria, we need to make sure that it doesn't only apply to one company. And that's been one of the accusations from other developers in the past. There's lots of private sector money that wants to come into Tampa to invest in affordable housing and mixed use. And we need to make sure it's open to everybody, that it's fair to everybody. And if we end up picking some of the same firms we worked with before, we need to be able to show a really good case as to why that happened. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Vieira, did you want to say something?
Oh.
Yes, Board Member Vieira.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yeah, I go back to the idea of affordable housing in downtown Tampa. And we'd had discussions previously on certain areas of Tampa saying, why are we, going to push affordable housing here? And it's been said before, I think it may have been Councilman Hurtak, I don't recall, which is that having affordable housing and accessible housing in a place like downtown Tampa that's getting to be beyond unaffordable for 97% of families in Tampa is a real moral statement that a good and decent city does. It says that when you have a place that is known for, more affluence, and you're going to have a city-funded asset that funds housing for welders, electricians, nurses, teachers aid, teachers, cops, firefighters, et cetera, people working in service industries, et cetera, a range of income. I think that's a very, very good moral statement to have. And I want us to, make sure to keep our eye on the ball 100%, that's the issue before us, is that all of these units, I think, should go to individuals, as they will be, that serve as a moral statement here for the city. Because again, it's something to take a piece of property in the city of Tampa and downtown Tampa that's worth so much money, and then to use it for people who are having trouble making ends meet. That's a moral statement that I applaud. And so I think this is a great idea and I know we all do fully support. So thank you.
Board Member Maniscalco, followed by Board Member Miranda.
Thank you very much for that update. I agree with keeping this in perpetuity, keeping it affordable forever, essentially. It's interesting looking at this map because as the interstate came through downtown died and people went out into the suburbs, the malls came up, Britton Plaza, all the big areas with parking, and you figured the interstate, this major artery, would feed into downtown, but it died, and now we're coming back more than half a century later. It's interesting to see the reconfiguration of Ashley Drive because that is a barrier. It doesn't cut off downtown because you have more on the other side before you go into West Tampa with the Fortune Street Bridge. And now we're going back to that. We're reconfiguring those blocks. The fact of having housing affordability as downtown is coming back and people are moving back and we see the growth, we see the density. I wish I could live downtown. I have a friend of mine that lives at the Addition, which is the Addition. It's different. $16,000 a month in rent.
What?
I go, yeah, I'll tell you a story one day, but I'm like, you're spending $16,000 a month. I mean, he's a bachelor or whatever. He goes, this is where everybody wants to be. And I go, I can't, that's a car, that's an education, anyways, it's crazy the amount of money at Heron, at the Addition, at other places downtown. But what about the people that are working, in this area? Councilman Vieira mentioned all sorts of different jobs. What about people in the service industry? People that keep these places active, they need a place to go. And that demand, as long as we have this density and growth into downtown again, that demand is always going to be there. We're always going to need those individuals that are working, that need a place to live, that cannot afford a car, that may take public transportation. But look at what's coming. Councilmember Clendenin said it. The streetcar is coming. The streetcar comes when it arrives. I see the potential expansion and extension here. It's going to be touching those areas. People will not need a car. They will not need to rely on a bicycle or to walk because they have other means of transportation. And you have BRT and the bus routes and everything that are feeding in this Florida Tampa Street area. This is exciting. It's exciting because when you own a property, you're the king or the queen, and when we have control of this parcel, once we go out to that RFP, and as Councilmember Carlson said, put it out there, advertise it. We want all sorts of people. We want it to be a fair process, and we want to get the best bidder to build the best product because this is something that is transformational and multi-generational. We should have done this a long time ago, but things were different a long time ago. Now we are facing a housing crisis. We are facing all sorts of stuff, and this is such a wonderful investment that we've made. I believe it was $5.5 million when we purchased this parcel.
I don't recall what the amount was. 4 something sounds about right, but I could not.
But it's something that we control. It is ours to provide a public benefit for housing that is so needed, and Nothing. I appreciate your presentation. I respect you very much. I know your background. I mean, you know the history, you know planning, and, again, this is very good. Thank you.
Attorney Massey, you wanted to say something,
No,
and then Board Member
the purchase
Clinton.
price for the Army-Navy site was about $4.5 million. We
Yeah,
also spent, I think, close to another $1 million
For the sign.
for the billboard site
Yeah.
adjacent to
Okay,
it.
so, yeah. But it's an investment that,
Yeah, we had
what
to
would
take
it be
them
today? A $10 million parcel? I mean, with the way real estate is around here, you never know. So we've locked it in, we have it, and it's in our control.
And since the Army-Navy site and the billboard site was purchased with CRA dollars, it does, at least that portion of the project needs to be used in a manner that's consistent with the statute and the plan. And affordable housing is an important part of that, so.
Correct.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's within the purview of what we're supposed to be doing, and this is a perfect example. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Clendenin.
Well, it's a perfect segue, because that's what I wanted, and Board Member Carlson said it, and now it's reiterated, that the portion the CRA purchases is only a small portion of this property. The vast majority of the land that we're talking about redeveloping is city-owned property, not CRA-owned property. So our flexibility exists, it just depends on where that footprint is. So there's a lot of flexibility on this parcel, which is also exciting. I think people have to realize, and I think this is part of our branding or discussion of what the expectations are and setting expectations. When we say affordable housing, I think that may mean something different to people, a lot of different people. But I think generally speaking, when we're talking about this project, it's about workforce housing in downtown. This is maybe 1 mile away from North Boulevard complex. So we already have a lot of housing there, affordable housing that's being constructed, and more coming as we're speaking. Shovels are in the ground. So it's not like there's a vacuum of project the city has been moving forward as far as helping folks to provide housing in this area. So workforce housing is extremely important, but again, this should be a mixed-use development that provides the fabric of the city of downtown and the city of Tampa, and as much as we possibly can. I would like to see, again, I know when we talk about the 750, I'm assuming that units includes trying to get to the maximum density that we can allow, that is feasible. So I mean, we want this to be a densely populated area, and again, with the amenities that we need and that walkability. So again, I just wanted to bring it home that this is just a piece of this property is CRA. The rest of it is city, so that it's going to be fascinating to watch that develop.
Thank you. Board Member Miranda, followed by Board Member Hurtak, and then Carlson.
Let Hurtak go on.
Okay, Hurtak, his light was on, so it's okay. You can go.
But it is, he has spoken before. He already
And
got
that
his
is
second
true,
turn,
so that's fine. You can go.
So the issue with this is, yes, some of it is CRA and some of it is city. And there's no way that you can build, or rather it is very difficult to build an all affordable. And that is not what we're talking about. We know that there will be market rate to help pay for it. We understand that. That makes sense. But I was concerned with one thing that Mr. Johnson said about, possible townhomes. And I highly disagree with that, because as Board Member Clendenin mentioned, this is in the CBD. We should be doing the absolute most density that we're allowed based on airport height restrictions. And I don't think townhomes in downtown are an appropriate use of that. So I hope that's not a part of the RFP.
Yeah, if I may, I wanted to make sure you were finished. No, I was merely speaking about the fact that townhomes are part of the Rome Yard development, as that was the way in which, that was the small portion that they had for fee simple ownership, was a number of those, and those are, that's all. I was not implying that we would have townhomes as part of this development. I apologize for that.
Thank you for clarifying. That was basically what I was just trying to figure out. And I don't think there's a problem with having for sale things with this development, but definitely, as was stated earlier, as dense as possible within the restrictions that are given by the airport. So thank you very much.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to say, again, this is about an opportunity that we have only once to make sure that the most that we can get for affordable housing is there. no downtown or no development can survive unless they have individuals that can work and walk and come home. And this is the opportunity to bring back, downtown had the same thing as Ybor City in a way. They used to have grocery stores close by, just a block or two on the east side of Florida Avenue. They had everything. And through the different changes of life, the different new development in Britton Plaza and North Gate and so forth, they came about. Now the places that were redeveloped that brought the demise of Ybor City downtown, they themselves are going out of business because the malls came in. Now the malls are going out of business because you got the Amazon. So you got the whole thing turning like a washing machine. Put your clothes in, anything can go, you can wash them all. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to do it right the first time. We don't have a second chance. And if you really want to do it right and low expensive, you built it yourself. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Board Member Carlson, do you want to say something?
Yeah,
for the second time?
three quick things. If you said this, I apologize, but how are you defining affordable? Is it 80% AMI? It's not like 140 or 200?
The way it is right now in the draft was basically under 80 would be a chunk. I want to say it was 30%. And then 80 to 140 would be the other chunk. So you'd have an under 80 tranche, if you will, and then you'd have something that they could do at 80 to 120. If we got a proposal for everything under 80% AMI, that would be fine. It's just that's how it's currently written.
Yeah, I would encourage you to put incentives to make it all below 100, but definitely not go above 140. The other thing is that, just trying to make sure that it's all fair, how will you deal with anybody who controls adjacent property? Will they have an advantage, or are you just going to measure it based on the merit of the proposal that goes on this footprint?
That is a question I could not ask directly at this time.
Anyway,
I would assume that in the experience I've had doing these types of RFPs, it would be very much focused on the property itself.
I don't know I don't have any knowledge about what's going on in that area, but since this has been out for a long time, somebody could have gone and assembled land or contract options on land, and then they could be ready to go and say, well, we have an advantage because this is only going to be a small part of a bigger project.
Yes,
but I think it should be measured just on the footprint. And the last thing is that whether it's the streetcar or bus or an autonomous vehicle or whatever, I like the idea that we're making developments transit ready. We're not waiting for the transit to come, which people usually refer to as TOD. It might be a misuse of it, but we're making it transit ready. We're ready. We're going to be plugged into it. We're prepared, and we're going to make sure it works. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I want to say something. The final interdepartmental review. First of all, let me just say thank you, because, I've been bugging you about this one since I signed the contract for the purchase of the property. So I appreciate that. Joe Robinson's in my head, implementation. The interdepartmental review timeline, when is that? Can you?
Well, I will say this, I believe I have a meeting that, thanks to the amazing administrative staff, I believe I have a meeting with several of the senior folks in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm hoping that out of that, I will get some final direction as far as modifying the final RFP language. So I do have something on the calendar as far as us getting together and collaborating and really kind of working through it all. But that, once I get through the discussion, I'll know exactly how much longer it will take. But
Also, I just want to address the request for proposal advertisement. It was loosely stated, that process where we may show favoritism to someone. And I don't know, I know you're in an interim role, so is Ms. Feely. For the public as well as for myself, can you just share a little bit about the RFP process and, is there equity in that? How do we go about doing that to get as many proposals as possible?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think there's there's the basic level of communications that's going to happen via our purchasing department, listing it on the website, putting it out. There's going to be, I would assume that with a project like this, we would have additional levels of outreach to let folks know. I know my experience, like working in, Pinellas County, that's something we would do if it's a project like the development project like this. I will say that once it's in the purchasing hopper, and once that becomes an advertised RFP, there is a cone of silence. You're not going to be able to talk to potential bidders or frankly any, like if you're on the committee, you can't talk to other committee members. It's a very controlled and structured process to ensure that everybody has the same information, the same answers to the same questions, and that all the information is coming through one source or one person at purchasing. And that's typically how those work. And then at the end of the process, you still cannot, if you're a selection committee member, I went through this with the Land Development Code. If you're a selection committee member, even after you've done the presentations, even after you've done the written review of the proposals, you still are under that cone of silence until it becomes official with a notice of intent to award. Essentially, then it becomes public. And at that point, we're having conversations, we're having more open conversations because you've selected somebody. With that being said, I think in this instance, there's going to be an engagement approach that happens. I think we need to work on how it works once there is, whether that we do public presentations at some point with some of these ideas. I think that's something that we certainly need to talk about, for a communication strategy. But yes, it is very controlled throughout the process once the RFP is out.
Okay, even prior to the code of silence, is it ever a time where our city staff encourages people to apply for RFPs? Is that our position to do that?
I have not done any of that. I will say that I think that, our communications team and once it is out there, I think there is some strategy that can be taken place. We know players in the community, we know players that could get that distribution, but we want to make sure it's done in a transparent way.
Okay, Attorney Massey, you want to add to that?
Just a couple of things. Because the property is within the downtown CRA, in addition to what purchasing would normally do or what we would normally do for any request for proposal, these must be advertised in newspapers of general circulation in Hillsborough County. Rome Yard, I know that we advertise, I think, in 2 or 3 different places. So I would suspect we would do something similar here. The other thing I would say is a project of this scale and magnitude potentially, I think will draw a lot of interest from a lot of different folks. I don't think you're gonna have any problem with getting.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we have new business.
Do we have a vote on that date certain for the continuation?
No, he said no.
Yeah, no enforcement.
Okay. Any,
New business, none.
you?
You ran a great meeting. You did.
Thank you. I'll just receive that.
All right, that's it.
Okay.
When you think about the meeting, we can't talk to each other outside of this room. It's necessary for us to be able to, and I think we're airing issues that we hear from the public, and we all have different perspectives, so it's helpful.
Of
Thank you.
course. Anyone online? New business?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I actually have something, just to go over quickly, the presentation of the, Mr. Massey is leaving us, his departure, he's gonna give us about 60 days of his time, maybe a little bit more, and I just wanna say I appreciate everything that you've done, for us in this role. I know that it is very taxing, and, but you went out and you found you didn't find him, you already knew Mr. Shepherd, and you're presenting him to us. He'll be at the board meeting. Can you just address that for the public as well as for us?
Sure.
He'll be here next month.
Yes, Mr. Cliff Shepherd, and I just handed out to you all his firm bio. He is the attorney for the Florida Redevelopment Agency. He's also the attorney for several CRAs in the state, including Fort Myers, I believe Lake Wales, anyway, he is probably the preeminent CRA expert in the state. And his offices are in Maitland, but he travels throughout, and he's happy to be here at our board meetings if we want him here physically. He can also attend remotely if that works, but he will be here physically on the 10th of October. I will also have on the agenda for the 10th of October a contract for your consideration to retain him as your counsel.
Thank you. Okay, any questions about that?
Yes, ma'am.
There's nobody local that has this level of expertise?
No, I mean, this is a government job.
Right.
It's a very.
Yeah, I get it. It just,
You're
Maitland's an awful lot farther.
You're not going to find someone in a private law firm who does this type of work.
I mean, I-4 is such a mess.
I know.
Yeah.
And, well, We just gotta get better about seeing, maybe we can have a button or something for the people that come online.
Or we just shackle Morse to the desk
Okay,
there.
that's it. This meeting is adjourned.
Move for receive and file.
Motion to
Second.
receive and file.
Second.
Second by Board Member Miranda. All those in favor? Meeting adjourned, 11:32.